This is our main character, Zeke. Just a few seconds ago, he won the duel against his half-brother Greg. This was also the match to decide who would inherit the family. Everyone in the stands was astonished, not understanding how this useless young master could have defeated Greg, who was considered a genius. After the match ended, Zeke turned to a man on the high platform and said, "Father, the count title will belong to the winner of this duel." At these words from his son, the man began to roar in anger, "How dare you, this damned match decides nothing." But after hearing his blatant renege, Zeke calmly removed his gloves and said, "Well, I expected this. I've never wanted that damn title for a moment in my life." Saying that, he threw the ring in his hand towards him. This is the ring representing the heir. Zeke always held it because he was the eldest son. As for this man, after seeing me throw the heir's ring like a pile of trash towards him, he couldn't contain his composure and rushed straight to the railing and yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" To this question, Zeke answered very nonchalant, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm leaving this family of my own accord." The reason Zeke could say these words so easily was because this was his second life. In his previous life, he knew how miserable this family was, but that's not the main reason. One of the biggest reasons he could give up the heir's position without its protection was that in his previous life, he had reached the pinnacle of human strength. He was also the one who took the lives of countless people. Those who worshipped and feared him called him the Demon King. As for why he regressed, it's because he was beaten to death. All of this has to do with the day before. This is when the decisive battle between him and the hero's party took place. Enemies meeting need no words. The entire hero's party began to launch countless moves towards Zeke. But facing these kinds of moves, Zeke only used a few sword strikes to cut them all apart. But at this moment, a voice rang out, "May you always be full of strength, O hero." After this girl's blessing, the hero's whole body was covered in a golden divine light, and his strength reached its peak limit. And in the next moment, the hero unleashed a powerful cleaving strike towards Zeke. Just looking at the giant sword aura in front of him, Zeke knew that he couldn't withstand this blow. Then, a earth-shattering explosion began, and Zeke's consciousness was lost. I don't know how long has passed. This time Zeke slowly woke up, because in his ears there were countless voices. "Kill him quickly, he is the Demon King of Strength. Who knows when he will recover his strength? He can't do anything to us in this state," the hero said. At this point, Zeke began to really come to his senses and realized he wasn't dead yet. And at this moment, standing in front of him was the handsome hero. Although he didn't like him, he had to admit that he was really handsome. And on this side, the hero also started pointing his sword and said, "Listen, before I finish you off, I will recount all the crimes you have committed. Taking hundreds of lives of the holy knights of the Carwoodman team, killing innocent people, blah blah blah, and of course, this isn't a wrongful accusation, he really did do these things." But even though that was what he did, hearing the hero say it with his own mouth made him feel a little uncomfortable. At the same time, a thought popped into his head, it would be a waste to die like this. Luckily, I still have the key to bend fate. Thanks to it, I can stab this bastard one last time. Along with the blade that has bent the fate of the target to change the future, but I don't know how his future will change. And while he was thinking, the hero had finished reading Zeke's crimes and was preparing to execute him. Demon King Zeke, I hope in the next life you will become someone who knows how to do good deeds. As he said this, he swung his sword down. Okay, if I have the chance, but not now. There's something I have to do quickly, it's to teach you a lesson, you idiot. Saying this, Zeke's middle finger lit up. Then he shot something towards the hero. Instantly, this thing began to break, piercing through the armor and into the flesh within. The hero, seeing this scene, became enraged. "How did you get this?" But Zeke answered this question. Seeing the hero so angry made him extremely happy. "It seems to be working, you're so angry." Meanwhile, the hero couldn't contain his anger anymore, and immediately decapitated him. "I wanted to live longer than this, but I have no regrets." Cut to another scene. Zeke suddenly wakes up from his bed due to the loud noises that make it impossible for him to sleep. Ugh, damn it, these birds keep chirping and I can't sleep. But at this moment Zeke also realized something. So he started checking, first looking at his hands, then touching his throat to check, and finally looking at himself in the mirror. "I'm young again, but why? I clearly lost at the hands of those bastards." Then sat and listened to that guy's nonsense, and finally I used the key to bend fate. Is it because of it? But where did I get that key? I can't remember. Zeke tried to hold his head but still can't remember where he got the key. But at this moment there is one thing he is sure of. Anyway, he is definitely back in the past. He is in his private room, so that means at this time he is still living with his family. What should I do now? Maybe I should go find the key to bend fate. Wait, but why did I leave my family back then? It feels like my memories are being suppressed, but suddenly at this moment the door to his room is suddenly opened. making Zeke start to think, can his father just enter the room of the eldest son of a noble family like that? Ah no, at this time even the servants don't consider me a noble. Then the door was completely opened, a complaining voice rang out, "Hey young master, are you still in the room?" This voice is from a blonde-haired servant. Looking at this person's appearance, Zeke can't remember who he is. But at least he's using the right title with him. And on this side, the servant, seeing Zeke not saying anything, starts to say, "You always leave at dawn, have you given up on that too? Now you can't be lazy, can you?" And Zeke, seeing this servant being so rude, started to take a breath and beckoned, calling him back, "Come here." This servant, seeing this, was a little confused, but he still came closer. But then just smiled and looked at him without saying anything, which made this servant uncomfortable. "If you called me over, say something." To answer this question, Zeke immediately gave him a misplaced punch. The servant, taking this blow, hurriedly covered his face and asked, "What are you doing?" But at this moment in front of him was a very different Zeke. His expression at this moment was extremely cold and dangerous, making the servant not even dare to look directly into the face of this master. Next, Zeke tripped him, causing the servant to fall to the ground. And the next thing waiting for this servant is a merciless beating. This servant started to cry and apologize, but it seems Zeke doesn't intend to stop. But at this moment a voice rang out, "What's going on?" The servant, hearing this voice, felt like he saw a savior. He hurriedly rushed towards this person and said, "Master Biner." Biner repeated once more, "I'm asking what's going on." This servant is still very rude. He even raised his middle finger at Zeke. At the same time, Zeke thought this bastard is a little impolite. Biner, seeing that Zeke did not answer, continued to ask, "Why aren't you answering?" Zeke, hearing this, said coldly, "You're talking to me like that, so what, are you going to hit me like you hit Han?" Zeke heard that and started to smile and said, "Okay, a dirty dog who can't even recognize its owner should be beaten so it knows to lower its tail." Biner heard this and was like hearing a strange story from Vietnam. "You think you can beat me now, you think you're that good?" Zeke heard this and replied, "With my current physique and skills, I can't beat you, I admit that. But what can I do? In name, I'm your master, I can't not train a dog to be obedient, right?" Zeke said, grabbing the tablecloth. Meanwhile, Biner turned around and said angrily, "What dog? Do you know who I am?" But just as he said that, Zeke threw the tablecloth at him. At the same time while he was blinded by the blanket, Zeke also grabbed the vase nearby, and smashed it straight into his head. And this is a lesson Zeke wanted to teach this guy: strength isn't everything, you damn knight. After saying that, he turned to Han. "Now, let's finish the story we started earlier." Han heard that and began to turn pale, because what awaited him next would be a merciless beating. Of course, right after this ended, Zeke was called to the Patriarch's office to sort things out. Standing in front of this door, he had many thoughts. Before, he used to be very afraid of opening this door. Even so, "I don't care at all now." Then he just opened the door. Inside were the Patriarch and others waiting. Meanwhile, when Biner saw Zeke enter, he looked at him with an annoyed look. This was because he remembered a recent conversation with the second son, Greg. "Father knows about it. I'm very disappointed in you for falling flat on your face and becoming a disgrace to the Steel Will Knights like that." Saying that, Greg reached out and stroked Biner's face as if stroking a dog. "You didn't do anything wrong, right? Be confident. I mean, Zeke is your opponent, you'll have a chance to defeat him later." These memories appearing made Biner extremely angry. At this time, the Patriarch also began to speak. "You're late." He was Count Vodo Steelwill, Zeke's father. After Zeke heard him ask that, he replied in a very bored tone, "What do you want, father?" After Voder heard his answer, he began to get annoyed. "You brat, have you forgotten how to greet people now? You don't even accept me, what's the point of doing that?" Hearing this, Voder became even more angry, rotten thinking, "If you act like this, how will you inherit my title of Count? You are the official heir of Steelwill, at least make an effort." Hearing this, Zeke asked back in a contemptuous tone, "The heir? Are you talking about the official heir? Have you ever really thought about giving that title to me?" This brat, Vordo, was about to say something more when a gentle hand was placed on his shoulder, and this person's voice rang out. "See, Count, I've told you time and time again, that child is still so rude." This woman was the Count's wife, Zeke's stepmother, Florelle Steelwill. After hearing her say that, Zeke's hands clenched in anger. "I remember these two clearly. They always find ways to surpass me, then oppress and slander me." Thinking of this, he took a breath. Then suddenly acting very properly, "How could I be disrespectful and rude to you? It's completely a misunderstanding. Mother." He deliberately dragged out the word mother as a way to mock her. Florelle's face became distorted after hearing this. Annoyed, meanwhile Zeke still raised his voice and stated, "Thinking about it, it's thanks to those two that I was invited here to see father. I sincerely apologize, father. Saying this, he began to walk towards the sword hanging on the wall, and took it. This action surprised everyone. But Zeke didn't care. He began to point the sword at Han and continued, I made a mistake, I will use this opportunity to end the matter. Seeing this, Han turned pale, quickly looking at the people around him for help. The second son Greg next to him was very happy to see this scene. This idiot, he's pointing a sword at someone right in front of father. Voter also began to speak, how dare you point a sword at someone in this place? Hearing this, Zeke replied in a very carefree manner, of course, someone who insults the rightful heir of the great Count Steelwill deserves to have their head chopped off. Isn't that why you called me here? Hearing this, Florel quickly said, stop, what do you mean? Han insulted you, that can't be true, right? How would I dare to do that to you? Han said, but on the opposite side, Zeke started stabbing his sword into the floor and said, if that's the case, are you saying I'm lying to my father? These words really put Han in a difficult situation. If I say anything wrong here, I'll really be killed. Even Lady Florel won't be able to protect me then. Zeke knew very well that this guy was definitely Lady Florel's man, but he didn't understand why she had to go to such lengths for him. And while Han was struggling to figure out how to answer, Biner started to speak up, that's right. The young master is lying. Florel, on her side, felt like she found a way out. She quickly grabbed Biner's arm and asked, is that really so, Sir Biner? Yes, Countess. Sir Zeke unilaterally attacked Han and me. Zeke smirked when he heard that. A knight like you claims to have been unilaterally attacked so easily, aren't you ashamed? Looks like you're not planning on admitting your guilt either, huh? Biner became embarrassed when he heard that and said, not a word I've said is a lie. But Zeke didn't expect these guys to tell the truth, so he planned to reveal his hand. In the end, you're still going to claim you're innocent, huh? If that's the case, no need to say more, prove it with your abilities. As he spoke, he pointed his sword at the guy. Biner was shocked and said, are you crazy? But Zeke didn't pay attention to his question. Instead, he turned to his father and asked, you can see it now, right? Father, you can ultimately use this opportunity to completely get rid of me if I lose in this match. This was also in line with Voter's intention, so he agreed to allow the match to take place. Biner was also very excited when he heard that, remember your words. Perhaps at this moment, he had already thought of a way to take Zeke down. Zeke was also very happy with this decision. Thank you for that decision. Father, you can decide the time and place yourself. As he spoke, he turned his head to leave. Zeke's carefree attitude, as if he had already secured victory, also angered Voter. I only intended to scold him a little and then let him go home, but perhaps this might be a suitable excuse to pass the Count title to Greg. Meanwhile, Zeke, after putting his sword back on the wall, said, Father, I want to try to change from now on. You see, I realize I won't be able to achieve what I want if I keep getting stuck in the past. Voter was a little confused when he heard that. What you want? You mean the Count title? Zeke heard that and turned his head to say, anyway, you won't understand anything I say now, Father. I'll see you in that match, Biner. And to prepare for the upcoming battle, Zeke began to work hard. At the same time, many thoughts ran through his mind. Thinking about it, how could I have been so weak and naive? My father's attention was everything, but I wasn't even properly taught swordsmanship. Because my father was very reluctant to let me learn swordsmanship. At that time, I didn't know about the great and brutal existence hidden inside me. Normally, a person's innate mana amount is fixed, and compared to the average person, my mana is much larger, but it's also bolder and more difficult to control. That's why when Zeke used just a little mana, it caused an explosion. Knowing that it's hard to return to the mana that I possessed when I was the Demon King, well, it's impossible that such a large amount of mana that can be compared to the mana of a dragon would awaken in me right away in one go. Speaking of which, I even received the title of Demon King of Strength. To be like that, I really had to go through a lot of difficulties and challenges, to the point where it felt like everything was arranged by someone. So, thinking of this, Zeke jumped up, and said to the tree behind, stop peeking and leave. These words startled the person hiding behind the tree. He knew he was here. Seeing that he had been discovered, this person no longer hid and came out of the tree. It turned out to be the second son, Greg. At this moment, he also said, it seems that you have finally awakened your mana, huh? But you probably don't think you can win with just that level, do you? The battle with Sir Biner and the inheritance of the Count title. Why are you doing something so unlike yourself? Greg said, wearing a contemptuous smile. Then he pretended to be kind and advised, Zeke, just live as you have before. You have to know the situation. I'll take care of you later, so you don't have to feel. But when he said this, Greg began to fall silent. Because on the opposite side, Zeke's face had turned dark. This kid's words really made Zeke angry. So you're afraid that I'll take that Count's position from you? Greg, hearing Zeke's cold voice, felt a little uneasy, but he regained his composure and said, "No way. I will give up becoming a count if I can't defeat someone as worthless as you, Zeke Steelwill." On the other hand, Zeke wasn't afraid of anyone. If this guy liked to fight, he'd oblige. "If that's what you think, then I should act according to what my little brother wants. Inherit the title of count, let's see who wins, true to the style of our warrior family." Hearing that, Greg started swatting Zeke's hand off his shoulder, saying, "Are you crazy? Are you suggesting we have a duel?" Zeke replied, "What if that's what I'm suggesting?" Greg also agreed, "I have no reason to refuse." "Good, then I'll take that as your agreement. I'll decide the time and place." After saying that, Zeke left. And soon after, the battle between Zeke and Biner began in the presence of countless people from the territory. At this moment, standing before Zeke, Biner said loudly, "I have sincerely learned a lesson from you, young master. Now it's time for me to teach you a lesson. Because skill is what determines victory, you will regret not wearing armor." While this guy was babbling, Zeke didn't pay any attention. What he was concerned about was that his sword seemed a little dull. He wondered who was responsible for that. And after Biner's boasting, the referee announced, "The battle begins." Immediately after the order rang out, both rushed forward at the same time to gain the upper hand. Biner was the one who launched the first attack. Although Zeke blocked the attack, his whole body trembled. Even if he's stupid, a knight is still a knight, I guess. Although Zeke said that to sound tough, he was actually a little surprised because this guy's slash was stronger than he thought. And Biner, after seeing Zeke struggling to block one of his attacks, began to smile. "How about this, young master? If we fight fairly, you can't beat me." Constantly having to withstand heavy attacks caused Zeke to be pushed back a distance. But at this opportunity, Biner also began to concentrate mana into his sword to increase its attack power. Sure enough, after the sword was covered in mana, both its speed and power became stronger. Zeke was already at a disadvantage when fighting normally. Now he had to endure the added power from mana-infused slashes. It was truly hardship upon hardship. And Biner was very pleased to see that he could give Zeke such a hard time. Meanwhile, on the high platform, the Steelwill family was observing. The steward next to the patriarch, seeing that Zeke could fight with Biner for so long, was a little surprised. "The young master is fighting better than I thought. He has blocked several of Mr. Biner's attacks." But Mrs. Florell didn't like this, so she deliberately downplayed it. "But I think we are still dominating, don't you think so?" But before Vodo could answer, the steward continued, "Of course, because the young master has not been properly taught swordsmanship." These words from the steward made the lady look at him with an uncomfortable gaze. As for Voder, he just remained silent and said nothing. And at this time, in the stands, the audience was cheering and yelling, "Mr. Biner, finish him, don't show him any mercy." These words made Biner even more excited. "Did you hear that, young master? The audience wants me to finish you." Following that, he began to attack even more fiercely. "If you don't want to get hurt, your best option now is to surrender." As he spoke, the sword in his hand began to burst with even more intense mana. "Zeke may not be strong, but his trash talk is just as good. Surrender my ass. I've only just begun." Saying this, he also began to cover his sword with mana. It seems like he's planning to execute some kind of move. And after seeing Zeke using mana, Biner was so shocked that he was stunned. "Damn it, no way," Biner thought to himself. And on the opposite side, Zeke unleashed his move. All that could be seen was him releasing mana from his sword, creating countless mana bullets. But Biner was no slouch either. Although he was a little surprised by this scene, he was able to dodge or block all of these mana bullets. As for Zeke, after releasing this attack, his whole arm began to tremble. "I know, the mana is losing control, I can't fully control it." Although it couldn't hurt Boar, that attack really impressed everyone in the stands. They started discussing with each other, "What did I just witness? I saw it too, but I can't believe it, just now Mr. Zeke." Even the butler on this side was amazed. "Did you see that, Count? That's the skill of extending the senses. That's when mind sword unity goes through mana. Where did he learn a technique that allows someone to control a sword like their own limbs?" And at this moment below, Biner was worried and wondered, when did he learn a skill like this? But his stance after using mana is very unstable, like his body and mana are separating, and he can't control it. "My opponent is still just a weakling." Thinking this, Biner's face began to become serious and he said, "Stop playing around already." Then Biner started attacking again. First, he started gathering mana into his sword. Next, he prepared to execute his ultimate move. With countless years of combat experience, Zeke was able to barely dodge Biner's move. If he got hit by that, he would be game over. Biner was a little surprised that Zeke dodged this move, but his attack was not over yet. The next move, Biner didn't use the laser blast anymore, but he gathered all the energy into the sword and stabbed toward Zeke, you won't be able to dodge this one. Biner shouted. As Biner said, Zeke really couldn't dodge this attack. As a result, after getting hit by this void slash from Biner, Zeke flew like a cannonball into the wall. Looking at the current situation, it seems that Zeke has lost the ability to fight. And the crowd in the stands began to cheer, as expected of Mr. Biner. Biner was also very much enjoying this feeling. I believe victory is clear. Do I need to attack him again? The young master is already half dead. After his announcement, the crowd began to shout even louder. And while Biner was enjoying the feeling of victory, Zeke was struggling to use his sword to support his whole body. That's right, I can't beat you with the techniques of this body. But in this match, I haven't fought seriously yet. After speaking, Zeke rushed towards Biner, while he still had his back turned to him. First, he started sweeping his sword on the ground. Then he kicked up this cloud of dirt and dust towards Biner's face. This move may be a little dirty, but it works very well in any battle. And while Biner was still hindered by this cloud of dirt, Zeke gave him a headbutt. After getting hit by this move, Biner started flying backwards. When he started to sit up, he was still hampered by the dirt in his eyes that hadn't been cleared away. Again, what a coward, Biner cursed inwardly. Zeke, without hesitation, pointed his sword at his neck and said, "You call me a coward, are you just using that excuse to justify your defeat in a real battle?" Following that was a staring contest between the two, and eventually, Biner couldn't stand it because of the sand in his eyes. "I give up," Biner said. Zeke, hearing him say that, also began to speak. "Do you know why you were destined to lose? It's because you are muddled and arrogant, and you were also afraid that you might kill the eldest son of the family you serve. If you don't forget today's match, you will go even further, Biner." At this time, the referee also began to announce the victory belonged to young Master Zeke. But the audience above, after hearing this result, instead of applause, they started cursing. How could he throw dirt in his eyes? That's so despicable, cheating, fight fairly, damn it, that's not chivalrous. Zeke didn't want to argue with these factory farm chickens. As long as he won, that's all that mattered. At the same time, voter above wondered, Zeke, when did he learn this magical technique? There's no way someone could have taught him. The butler beside him slowly explained, "Count, don't you understand, he was born with it." And Greg started to tremble with worry. How can he still be okay after taking Biner's void slash head on, that lowly Zeke, absurd. And while Greg was still pondering the problem, Zeke shouted from below, "Greg, come down here and fight, I told you, didn't I? That the time and place would be decided by me." Greg trembled even more upon hearing this. And Vodo wondered aloud, what is he saying? Zeke didn't care about his question and continued to speak to Greg. "Are you pretending to be stupid, Greg?" Then he turned back to Vodo and said, "I know you've already approved this duel." The people in the stands began to murmur, so the rumors about a duel for the right of succession between young Master Zeke and Greg are true after all. Who would have thought that duel would take place today? But he's planning to fight in that condition. Where does he get his confidence? Zeke, seeing that Greg still hadn't come down, shouted, "What are you doing, Greg? Come down here now. Are you perhaps afraid of me?" Looking at Greg's appearance, it seemed that he was indeed afraid. And Vodo, seeing Zeke constantly shouting like that, became annoyed and turned to Greg. "Greg, go down there. Are you really afraid of Zeke when he's in such a sorry state? Don't bring any more disgrace upon us." So there was no other way. Greg had no choice but to go down and fight. But after going down and seeing Zeke's confident appearance, Greg became even more worried. How the hell can he smile like that? Everything from his expression, tone, actions, and even his fighting ability, he's no longer the Zeke I know. While Greg was thinking, Zeke suddenly said, "Greg, don't tell me you're just standing there waiting for me to attack first. Then as your big brother, I'll have to make the first move." After saying that, he started to charge forward. Greg saw Zeke charging forward with such overwhelming momentum, and his face became worried. Then he hurriedly used his sword to block the attack. But then he suddenly realized something. What the hell? He doesn't even have enough strength to attack anymore. Of course, that damn bastard. Zeke is still just Zeke. I, Greg, am the one who will inherit the title of Count. Thinking this, he began to swing his sword to push back. And at this moment, Zeke also realized the problem. If I fight normally, there's no way I can win in this condition. The injuries I received from Biner are not trivial at all. In my current state, I won't be able to use any magic. To win this duel as quickly as possible, this is the only way. Thinking this, Zeke began to laugh strangely. Then his left hand grabbed Greg's sword, ignoring the damage it would cause. "Have you ever heard of a duel with blood and flesh flying everywhere?" Zeke said. Then Zeke's hand also flared with a stream of mana. And then directly broke Greg's sword. Seeing his sword broken, Greg began to panic. And on this side, Zeke continued to threaten, "If you don't surrender, you will die, Greg, right here, right now." After saying this, Zeke also used the hilt of his sword, slamming it straight into his face, causing Greg to fall to the ground. Next, Zeke started throwing the broken piece of sword right next to Greg's ear. At the same time, his body emitted a terrifying pressure. Greg, seeing this scene, pissed himself. "I surrender," he shouted in fear. As soon as the referee heard this, he began to announce. The winner is young Master Zeke. Everyone probably already knows how things went next. Zeke demanded the title of Count because he had won the duel. But Voto roared and claimed that the duel didn't decide anything. Zeke knew this well, so he immediately tossed the ring of the heir towards Voter, and declared that he would leave the family. And before leaving this arena, he didn't forget to instruct his foolish younger brother, Greg, remember. The way to always win a battle isn't to fear death, to protect the border territory of the Steelwool family, which is always under invasion by external forces and everyone here. You must become stronger to do that. Having said that, he also snatched the recovery potion prepared for Greg. A truly high-quality potion, with only a few gulps, his wounds were completely healed. Don't forget the lesson I taught you today, Steelwool family. Thinking this, Zeke comfortably left the arena and the family. Of course, before leaving, he didn't forget to take along a coolie, and the one chosen was Han. By threatening that if Han didn't follow him, Zeke would kill him immediately, so to save his life, Han had no choice but to reluctantly follow Zeke. At this moment at the family gate, Zeke casually threw a huge backpack to Han. At the same time, he also thought, "I'm forgiving a servant who dared to resist me in exchange for a little labor. Am I being too kind?" But then, Zeke began to observe Han's body shaking with every beat, because of carrying the bulky backpack. A thought flashed through his mind: I must train his physical strength to be stronger, so that he can become useful. I must train him a little more. After that, Zeke also told Han his plan. "I don't have a fixed plan yet, but first, let's go to the neighboring territory of Porty." And this is the beginning of Zeke's life of trying to be a good person in this life. Not long after that, they began to move into a forest. At this point, even a naive person like Han felt something was wrong and asked, "Lord Zeke, this way is not for humans." Zeke calmly replied, "I know that if we go straight, we will travel less than half the distance. Why would I want to take the roundabout way?" Han hesitated and said, "Well, it's because if we venture out of the place where people live, there will be many monsters. That's why we're here," Zeke said. And this answer also made Han's face blank. Suddenly at this moment, a sound came from behind, causing Han to quickly turn around and look. "I must have misheard," Han reassured himself while his head was full of sweat. And the deeper he went into the forest, the more afraid a coward like Han became. Every 3 steps he took, he had to turn his head twice to see if any monsters would jump out and devour them. "I hope we can get through this place as quickly as possible," Han thought to himself. He must be very scared now, but suddenly at this moment, Zeke, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and turned around to say to Han, "Alright, your test starts right now." As he spoke, he handed Han a sword. At this moment, Han's face was still full of confusion. "Sorry, do you mean I have to fight?" As Han spoke, he turned his head and looked behind his back and was so surprised that his mouth dropped open, because at this moment, there was a monster standing behind him from who knows when. But luckily for him, this was just a goblin, the weakest type of monster for rookies. But even though he only had to face a monster that wasn't even 4 feet tall, Han worriedly said to Zeke, "Lord Zeke, I don't even know how to hold a sword. Please at least give me a bigger sword. What do you want me to do with this thing? You better be satisfied with that before I give you a stick, or would a stick be better?" Zeke said. And on the other side, the goblin also started making some strange noises, and jumped towards Han to attack. The cowardly Han just let it jump on his head and hit him on the head with its club. Zeke saw this scene and thought helplessly, "It will be a long process if I want to decide to train him." And to prevent Han from being killed by this weakest monster, Zeke immediately punched it, knocking it unconscious. And at this moment, Han also sat up complaining with a swollen face, "Why did you do that to me? Because you're too weak. You can't just carry things when you're with me. You must at least train to protect yourself. Use this and be ready for another time," he said while handing him a recovery potion. "I knocked down the goblin, but it will wake up soon." And that whole afternoon, after using up several recovery potions, at this point, at least Han was calm enough to face this goblin. And to gain an advantage in the fight, Han rushed forward and attacked first and executed a stab. Unfortunately, the goblin dodged it. Immediately after, it began to counterattack with a swipe of its club, causing Han to hurriedly use his hands to defend. The powerful blow made his face grimace. The goblin then began to swing its club to attack again. But after a few times of fighting like this, Han gradually got used to its attack pattern. Right before the club hit his face, Han managed to duck his head down to dodge the blow. This also made Zeke, who was observing from the side, a little surprised. That noob dodged the goblin's attack. In the end, he does have some talent. Back to the fight. At this moment Han suddenly accelerated and moved behind the goblin. And then taking advantage of its inattention, Han gave it a sword through the skull. At this moment, looking at the goblin's body collapsing, Han breathed a sigh of relief. I won. Han happily looked up at the sky to celebrate. And next to him, Zeke also handed him a recovery potion and said, "That was really beyond my expectations, thank you," Han said as he happily drank the potion. After drinking, Han continued, "It's all thanks to you, Mr. Zeke." But suddenly at this moment the potion bottle fell from Han's hand, because he witnessed a very frightening scene. That is, without knowing when, they were surrounded by a horde of goblins. Han's face was pale at this point, but Zeke was still very calm. He bent down slightly to look at the stones on the ground and then start picking them up. Han now wondered, "Sir Zeke, what are you going to do with the pile of rocks?" and started throwing these rocks towards the goblins at the speed of an arrow. But Zeke is a natural-born marksman, every bullet he throws is a headshot. So after just one volley of bullets, the entire herd of goblins was lying on the ground. But before Han could breathe a sigh of relief, Zeke spoke again, "Why are you so shocked? This is just the beginning." Han heard that and found it hard to understand. "What, this is just the beginning? What does that mean?" "Behind you," Zeke said. At this moment, Han turned his head and discovered that behind them was a group of tall and strong orcs. This scene truly petrified Han. And what's even more deadly is that Zeke said, "I have a lot of potions, so don't worry." Just hearing this sentence, Han already knows what his next fate is. And by that evening all the orcs were down and Han was sleeping like a dead pig. At this moment, Zeke also remembered the morning conversation with Han. "By the way, why does Florel defend people so much? What is the relationship between you and her?" Han heard that and was a bit confused, then replied, "Well, my grandmother used to be Lady Florel's nanny, maybe that's why she always spoiled me since I was little." At this moment, Zeke also remembered something, so he started to speak. "Come to think of it, there was a young servant that my mother always bullied, in particular because he was the nephew of the nanny who raised Lady Florel, and when she heard that, she started to cry because it was him." Then suddenly Zeke asked him if he remembered anything about my mother. Han was startled to hear that. Of course she was a wonderful person. She is kind to her subordinates, and respect for superiors. She is a sweet person to everyone. Han's words could be used to describe a perfect person, but unfortunately, the illustrations don't match the words. At this point, Zeke realized that he was actually hated by the Count family because of his mother. Considering all the wrong things she did, I really feel sorry for them, especially the Count and Florel Greg. But that doesn't mean I should feel guilty because of it. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a carriage not far away. So he hurriedly woke Han up with his foot. Han, still feeling sleepy, said, "Mr. Zeke, I don't think it's dawn yet." "Something's coming," Zeke said. Hearing this, Han immediately perked up. Is it a goblin or an orc? Then the sound of the carriage began to gradually increase and slowly head towards them. At this moment, Zeke pushed Han forward and ordered, "Go ahead." This startled Han. But then he began to calm down and asked, "Do you think it's a merchant?" Zeke didn't think so. That carriage doesn't sound as loud as the sound of horseshoes. If it were a merchant's cart, the axles of the horses pulling the trailer and the carriage would sound similar. "So, is it a traveler like us?" Han asked. Zeke couldn't help but sigh at the man's silly question. No traveler goes around with a carriage at this time. And without waiting for them to speculate for long, the sound came right in front of them. Leading this carriage procession were two knights. Then, a person stepped out of the carriage and said, "I apologize for the rudeness. You see, we also want to camp here overnight. I am a follower of Karna, Ain Lavella." The face of this girl also shocked Zeke. Because this is the saintess of Kawidman Lavella, and she was one of the people who contributed the most to sending Zeke to his doom in his previous life. Unexpectedly, they met here. Of course, at this time Lavella was not yet acquainted with Zeke. Then a man behind stepped forward and introduced himself. "I am Wige, serving young Miss Lavella, a candidate for saintess." Zeke immediately recognized him as the one called the killing machine of Tasnia. In the future, these two will be formidable people. But now I've told myself that I have to be a good person in this life. So, it should be okay if I get to know the other people from my previous life. So, after the introductions and handshakes, Zeke said, "I heard you're camping here tonight. Please make yourselves comfortable." "Thank you, we apologize for bothering you tonight," Wige said. Then Zeke was about to turn to Han and ask why he hadn't introduced himself yet. Then Han, as quick as the wind, knelt on one knee at Lavella's feet and introduced himself. "Hello, young lady, my name is Han." This scene left Zeke speechless. This guy is timid when fighting monsters but so enthusiastic when meeting girls. he even volunteered to help them set up camp to impress Lavella. This scene also made Zeke a little embarrassed. But it's also understandable. Because Lavella is unrealistically beautiful. Gren Zenert, that bastard, he only recruited beautiful people into his party. And just as Zeke was about to curse him a few more times, Lavella's voice began to ring in his ear. "Excuse me, may I sit here?" "Yes," Zeke replied. Immediately afterward, Lavella sat down next to Zeke and said her thanks. "Thank you. You allowed us to camp here tonight." "It's nothing," Zeke said. Zeke's answer like this caused the conversation to stop immediately. An uncomfortable atmosphere began to envelop them both. Finally, Zeke started to ask to dispel this atmosphere. "What brings you here?" Lavella heard the question and began to answer. "I am traveling to listen to the stories of all kinds of people. Whenever I encounter someone in need, I will pray for blessings for them." "That's wonderful," Zeke said. But before Zeke's praise, Lavella flusteredly said, "No, it's what a member of Kawidman should do." Then she also asked Zeke in return, "But why are you here?" "I'm trying to find a way to live like a good person." Speaking of this, Zeke realized that perhaps she was the best person to give him advice, so he asked, "Could you tell me how to be a good person?" This question made Lavella a little confused, and she asked in return, "How to be a good person?" "Yes, someone told me I have to become a better person, but I feel you are the most suitable person to ask for advice." After clarifying Zeke's story, Lavella began to think, "Well, there are many ways. But are you good at anything?" "I'm good at things that require strength," Zeke said. "So why don't you use that strength to help those in need?" After hearing this, Zeke began to think about this answer, helping those in need, Alright, then tomorrow I'll start looking for people who need help. The next morning, both groups parted ways and went to Porty on their own. At this time, Wige introduced Lavella while walking. "All the shops are under construction." Then suddenly he remembered something and said to Lavella, "Young Miss Lavella, please allow me to go on a quick errand." "Then please take care," Lavella said. And after Wige left, they continued their journey. Suddenly, a scream of fear echoed from inside the alley. And with her saintly nature, Lavella couldn't ignore this. She immediately looked into the alley and said, "Someone screamed over there." The knight behind her hurriedly reminded, "Young Miss Lavella, let us check first." And after they went a little deeper, Lavella discovered that in front, a young man was being surrounded and dealt with by 3 or 4 thugs. And the ringleader was none other than Zeke. Switch to the afternoon scene at some house. Lavella started questioning, "Zeke, I told you to help those in need, but you can't help the bad guys." Zeke was a little confused after hearing this, but they looked like they needed help. Hearing this, Lavella had to turn on preaching mode. "That's not all, make sure that from now on you only help those who are at a disadvantage. Instead of using violence against good people, you need to apologize." But the victim next to him waved his hand quickly and said, "I'm okay. My name is Sud, thank you for saving me." Then Sud also began to explain his story. The thugs who bullied him came from the Sierran trading house. They bribed the mayor with a huge amount of money so that their place was as valuable as an old store. "But this store is very important to me. It's full of memories of me and my father. So I told them I couldn't give up ownership of the store, and that's when they started making trouble. I don't know what to do from now on." Lavella listened to this touching story and quickly comforted him and said, "Don't worry, I'll go see the mayor of Porty right now." But the knight next to her hurriedly reminded, "Young Miss Lavella, a Carwoodman can't interfere in politics." But Lavella remained determined. "As someone who was taught by Lady Karna, I can't ignore this." Then she turned confidently to Sub and said, "I'll take care of this, leave it to me." After speaking, she immediately went to the mayor's mansion, causing the knights following her to rush after her. And then the next day, for some reason, Zeke always kept a gloomy face. Even Han couldn't stand this face, so he had to ask, "What are you thinking? You look so upset." At this time, Zeke had the opportunity to vent his emotions. "What Lavella said yesterday about helping the weak, do you think she's serious?" "I feel like she's wrong." Han refused to answer, but in his heart he thought, "You're the one who's wrong." But inexplicably, as if he could read Han's thoughts, he began to pinch his cheek and continued, "I'm also a little worried because they haven't returned since yesterday." But suddenly they noticed a noisy crowd in front discussing some news. "Emergency wanted. I see, she killed the deputy mayor, it's terrible." At this time, Zeke also began to squeeze in to find out what was happening. But immediately his face went blank. Because on the wanted poster was a picture of Lavella, wanted Lavella, accused of murdering the deputy mayor and plotting to curse Porty. Even Han was extremely confused when he saw this wanted poster, and at this time Zeke also smelled something strange, because he knew best that Lavella could never cause this. Then the chatter of the people around him caught his attention. "The witch from Carwoodman is terrible. Because of that witch's curse, the whole city has fallen into chaos. It's getting dark, we should go back before we run into them." "What are you doing? Go home quickly," someone shouted. Immediately after this statement, everyone quickly ran home. Even after returning home, they closed the windows tightly as if to prevent something. And in less than 30 seconds, the street was deserted. This made Han a little worried, because it seemed that they were the only ones who didn't know what was happening. "Sir Zeke, what's going on?" "Something strange is definitely happening here, we should go," Zeke said. Then the two of them also began to leave this place to return to the inn. The deserted streets and cold air made Han more scared and alert. And at this time Zeke was also checking his memories. "Before I regressed, was there anything similar to this? Lavella is a murderer, no way, these things are completely impossible, whether it's the curse in Porty or Lavella killing someone, or is it because everything has changed because I'm meeting Lavella?" And while Zeke was still thinking, Han began clinging to Zeke's arm and reminded him, "Sir, I think someone is following us." At this moment, Zeke also turned his head to notice and actually discovered someone was following them. This shadow began to emit growls unlike those of a human. Then slowly approached the two of them, waiting until the figure of this shadow actually appeared. It scared Han to death. This is a zombie," Han stammered. And not to let Han be scared for too long, Zeke immediately stepped forward. One sword beheaded this zombie. Looking at the zombie head beginning to roll down the ground, Han began to worry and wonder, why are there zombies in Porty? On the other side, Zeke's face became serious. "Let's go back, I have a bad feeling." Not long after that, on the way back, they met two guards, so they handed over this zombie to them. "Thank heavens no one was injured, we will destroy the body, you guys did a great job. You two should go back, before getting afflicted by the witch's curse." After saying this, the two guards also gave them a torch as thanks and left immediately. Having to constantly hear words like the witch's curse also made Han's belief waver a bit, and he asked, "Sir Zeke, do you think young Miss Lavella is really a witch?" Zeke confidently replied, "No, how could that be true? I'm sure the culprit behind this has framed Lavella." Han became even more curious. "How are you so sure she was framed?" "That's because Lavella is." Saying this, Zeke suddenly stopped because he knew he shouldn't say any more, and this made Han even more curious. "Because Lavella is what, Sir Zeke, you know something, don't you?" Hearing him say that, Zeke began to answer defensively, "Well, I mean, isn't it obvious just by looking at her face, that she is a good person?" Han then showed an understanding face, so it's also the type of judging a book by its cover. But suddenly at this moment Zeke suddenly heard some noise. Then he quickly turned his face behind. Han at this time was confused, not knowing what Zeke saw. Then at this moment, Zeke suddenly started running forward in the direction he heard the sound. And when running to an alley, Zeke discovered an acquaintance. "Why are you sitting here, your whole body is so dirty." At this time Han was also behind, ran up and was surprised to find that this is Lavella. At this time her face was covered with tears. So then both began to take her back to the boarding house. And wait, after Lavella had bathed and trim finished, Zeke asked, "Clothes is okay?" "Yes, very comfortable," Lavella said. Then also continue to said, "Han go outside buy food to the supper, then name that person soon come back only. So that time that night person go along to her where then, them go to do other task then Lavella after hear some words so then begin to lower to base the face under. "Because I those other people, speak and tear her start flow out." That time to the opposite direction Zeke also put up to the table one sheet of paper chase after then ask if concern until item this no. Lavella see so then in a hurry explanation, "I know must is sorceress." "That one I know," Lavella said. Lavella here obtain word this so eyes, "You believe me saw." For this, Zeke start to speak to voice speak full serious, that is because she matter wicked until that class where. Please tell to I hear matter what has really occur with she into that day us no go along to same. After so Lavella also start to slowly narrate come all matter, into day that mansion of the market, talk go through very is fluency is. No same to position market avarice, position deputy market worthy trust is say then he will to personally deal with question. After so, because obtain deputy market remind. So have possibility market has admit self is command rouse saw and prepare meal supper to group people Lavella. Self Lavella so want to refuse but cause the night all have hungry stomach. So she accepted the invitation. The knights, after sitting down at the table, ate like ravenous tigers. It was Lavella's fault for visiting him so abruptly, after all. And after dinner ended, they began to thank the mayor. But right after stepping into the mayor's room, they witnessed a terrifying scene. The deputy mayor had been murdered by the mayor, and not only him, but many others were lying at the mayor's feet. It seemed he had used some evil magic to take the lives of these people. "You have seen what you shouldn't have," the mayor said in a chilling voice. At that moment, a knight beside Lavella suddenly realized something and hurriedly shouted, "Young Miss Lavella, over there is Valor's statue." Following everyone's gaze, inside the room was a statue of a demon floating in midair. Lavella began to understand the issue and said, "You are Valer's puppet." The mayor didn't deny it at all and directly admitted, "Haha, you're only realizing it now." Lavella, hearing him so readily admit it, began to worry and asked what he wanted to do. Hearing that, the mayor's face began to turn crazed, saying, "Can't you see? Of course, I will sacrifice you to the great Valer." After saying that, he began to control the dead bodies at his feet to attack Lavella's group. The knights immediately went into battle, and as soon as a zombie charged, this knight cut it in half with a single sword strike. While in the back, Lavella began to use her blessing spells to enhance the knight's strength. But even so, Lavella began to worry, "There are too many, I can't handle them all. I'm just getting in their way." At this moment, it seemed the knight in front also sensed her worry and hurriedly turned his head to ask, "Young Miss Lavella, are you alright?" But suddenly at this moment, a zombie attacked from behind them. And while Lenla was still surprised and hadn't had time to react, the GHT quickly grabbed her shoulder, and threw her backward. It seemed that the knights held off the zombies so she could escape. After hearing her story, he asked, "Is it the Valer I'm thinking of?" "I think so. A cult that seeks destruction and chaos, they worship the evil god Valer and frequently commit murder and terrorism." This makes Zeke even more puzzled. What are they trying to do here? On the other hand, Lavella has a guess. It's just a guess, but I think they want to perform a ritual. I saw another inscription on the statue behind the mayor, and it read, "I offer this city to Valer." So they're trying to use the entire city as a sacrifice, Zeke said. Hearing him say that, Lavella asked, "Do you know anything else?" "Yes, they often place statues of Valer throughout the city and offer corpses to the statues. The book the mayor was holding is likely a catalyst to activate the energy from the statue." Lavella added, "After escaping the mansion, I tried to send a request for help to Carwoodman. But I couldn't because the city is under lockdown. I need to do something to stop this ritual," Lavella said, clutching her head in despair. But immediately after that, her face began to brighten when she heard Zeke's voice, "I will help you. Because this is a good deed, isn't it?" Lavella was very happy to hear that, but then she began to worry and asked, "Yes, but I'm worried that you'll be in danger if you get involved in this." Zeke didn't pay much attention to it after hearing that. "It's okay, we'll go to the mayor's mansion tomorrow night. Now you should go back to your room," he said, opening the door and going outside. To find that Han had been eavesdropping for who knows how long, Han was startled to be discovered. "Young master, I wasn't eavesdropping or anything." But at this moment, there was no time to blame him, because there was also something he needed him to do. "That's right, there's something you need to do. You will blah blah," Zeke began to whisper into Han's ear. And by the evening of the next day, Zeke and Lavella had begun to break into the mayor's mansion. After knocking out a few guards, they began to break in from the balcony on the second floor. Next, Lavella started leading the way. Their goal was the room containing the statue. After passing through a few more corridors, they finally arrived. It was here. This was where Valer's statue was kept. Even just standing outside, I could already feel a sense of unease. Then, the two of them started to open the door and go inside. At this moment, there was already someone standing inside the room. Zeke, seeing this, began to ask, "Is this bald guy the mayor?" Lavella, hearing this, began to look at him with angry eyes and said, "Yes, that's the one who killed the deputy mayor." Zeke, hearing this, didn't hesitate. He immediately drew his sword and charged forward quickly. Immediately after that, his sword was placed on the old man's neck. But suddenly, at this moment, he discovered something and began to go over to check. Lavella, seeing this from behind, said worriedly, "Be careful, Mr. Zeke, I don't know when he'll summon the undead." "You're wrong, young Miss Lavella, he's not the one behind this." As Zeke said this, he kicked him, and the old man fell to the ground. At this moment, he was just a corpse. At the same time, a terrifying black aura flew out of his mouth. The two of them began to watch to see where this aura led. Immediately after that, Zeke saw the real form of the culprit, found him. "That's the real culprit." At this moment, there was a man standing outside the door. Then, this man also began to speak, "I didn't think you'd come back on your own." Zeke may never have met this man before, but Lavella was very familiar with him because it was the dead deputy mayor. Lavella, seeing him still alive and well like this, exclaimed in surprise, "Deputy mayor." Zeke, hearing this beside her, also wondered, "Wasn't he dead already? I'm sure he passed away, so I don't understand what's happening." Lavella said, but suddenly, at this moment, Lavella also noticed something. It was that at this moment, the deputy mayor was holding a book in his hand. And at this moment, the deputy mayor also explained it himself so they wouldn't have to wonder. "This is the book containing the power of the evil god Valer. Its official name is the key to the sacrifice ritual, young Miss Lavella." At this moment, Zeke, after listening, understood everything. I finally understand what's happening here. The mayor must have reluctantly obeyed someone's orders before his death. He wasn't a minion of Valor but just a puppet. A puppet of that deputy mayor. Lavella, hearing this, her face began to look worried. No way. What about the knights? What have you done to them? The deputy mayor, hearing this, laughed and said, "Aha, you don't have to worry. I've gathered all of them and every one of their corpses and thrown them to the fish as food." Hearing the fate of her comrades caused Lavella's face to turn pale. And on this side, the deputy mayor began to wonder. But who is that guy? Is he some kind of secret protective force of Carwoodman? Zeke, hearing this, said, "No, I'm not. I don't have any connection to the Carwoodman Society or anything like that." "Then why are you here?" the deputy mayor asked. But before this question, Zeke began to answer with a sentence that made him furious. "I don't think a guy who believes in some nonsense fish needs to know that. Surely, those are deadly words for these types of dark cult guys, some nonsense fish. Looks like you're thirsty for punishment by Valor, right?" the deputy mayor said, clenching his hand. And on this side, Zeke still cleaned his ears as if nothing had happened. "You think I'm crazy? You think I'd accept punishment from some nonsense fish?" These words made the deputy mayor's anger reach its limit. At this moment, there was no need for negotiation or begging anymore. Then, the book in his hand also began to light up, and at the same time, he said, "Very well, I will make you repent in excruciating pain before being killed." After speaking, his whole body also began to erupt with a terrifying stream of mana. Following that, corpses also began to appear behind him. "Kill that guy, leave the woman alive, I have a way to use her," the deputy mayor began to order his undead horde. And immediately after that, the whole group began to charge forward to attack. Seeing this scene, Lavella hurriedly used her blessing to increase Zeke's power. And at that moment, the dragon heart reacted to her divine power. Zeke's eyes lit up, then his power, buffed by the girl, increased rapidly. He could dodge this zombie's attack with just a slight movement. And taking advantage of the fact that he was still being empowered, he used his speed and agility to slash each zombie. The power of the dragon heart combined with divine strength is absolutely not to be underestimated. It can be said that every blow is a victory. No zombie can withstand Zeke's second slash. And the deputy mayor at the doorway also turned pale. How is it possible that he could take down the zombies so easily? At the same time, after Zeke had defeated all the zombies in the room, he began to feel the abundant power inside his body. "It seems like my magic has returned a bit." Then he turned to mock the deputy mayor. "Is that all? Aren't you going to call some more monsters?" These words also infuriated the deputy mayor. "Your arrogant facade is useless, the preparations for the ritual have been completed." But Zeke heard that and said, "I don't think so." These words made the deputy mayor's face stiffen. "What, you see? I have found and destroyed all the statues of Valor in Porty." The deputy mayor thought Zeke had some serious trick up his sleeve, but after hearing Zeke say these words, he breathed a sigh of relief. "What did I think? Even if you destroy the statues, it won't change anything." But Zeke listened and confidently said, "If a priest of the Carwoodman order is specifically active on the statue, the power of the ritual will be weakened, right?" These words really silenced the deputy mayor and he couldn't explain anything further. And Lavella, who always accompanies him, also wondered, "Really?" "Yes, after destroying all the statues in Porty. All I have to do is come and destroy that thing," Zeke said, looking up at the statue floating in midair. The deputy mayor also knew that if he didn't stop these two, his plan would fall apart immediately. So he immediately ordered the other zombies to capture those bastards. But no matter how many of these weak chickens he calls out, they will all die. With just 2 slashes Zeke sent them to their second death. When the deputy mayor saw this, he opened his mouth and called his minions, but before they could even fight for 3 seconds, they were already dead. But immediately after that he decided not to fight anymore, because the buff duration was about to end. So he started to pick up Lavella and told her, "It might hurt, so don't move. We will escape from here." Lavella was a little worried when she heard that, "But the gate is blocked." "Of course, if the main door is blocked, just go through the side door, and the side door here is the window." Zeke immediately ran towards the nearest window, and used his back to break the glass. And the deputy mayor, after seeing them escape, he could still smile. "You run, then we should change the plan a bit." So the next morning a picture of was on the newspaper. "Breaking news here, the witch Lavella killed the mayor." At this time everyone was talking in a uproar. "Can't believe she killed the mayor, really terrible." But then these two people suddenly noticed Zeke's picture and wondered, "But who is this person? I don't know. But looking at his appearance, is he the witch's minion?" So then Zeke also pulled Lavella into an alley and happily showed off that he was in the newspaper. At this time he even began to feel narcissistic. "Huh, so good, I'm so handsome no matter how they draw it," but Lavella next to him didn't think so. "This photo looks like Zeke, but it's a bit strange. Surely the deputy mayor has seen his face, but I don't understand why he drew it like this. Zeke was still munching on bread and said, I think he's probably too lazy. After eating, he conveniently threw the trash outside, and at the same time told Lavella, don't worry anymore and eat, we have to move soon. At this time Lavella began to wonder again, where did you get the food? Ah, I borrowed it from there. While saying that, he looked at a bread stall in front. Lavella listened and started to look bewildered. Did you steal it? Zeke had to answer with a reluctant face, I can't help it because I can't afford to buy it in the current situation. After hearing Zeke's confirmation, Lavella slumped down in despair. She, a saint, had just become an accomplice with this guy, and when Zeke saw that she was starting to sulk like that, he had to say, don't be too angry, I didn't steal it. I have recorded all the places where I took things. Lavella on this side still likes things very much. Doesn't that need the consent of the owner? It would be too unrealistic to strictly follow social rules, Zeke said. Lavella listened and still started to puff out her cheeks because she was not satisfied. At this time Zeke had to launch his last trick. What if I go back and pay them double, right here? Lavella temporarily considered it as, this is after, Zeke, just a few seconds ago, he won the duel against his half-brother Greg. This was also to decide who would inherit the family. Everyone in the stands was astonished, not understanding how this useless young would have defeated who was considered a genius. After the match ended, Zeke turned on the high platform and said, Father, the Count title will belong to the winner of this duel. At these words from his son, the man began to roar in anger, how dare you, this match decides nothing. But after hearing his blatant renege, Zeke calmly removed his gloves and said, I expected this. I've never wanted that damn title for a moment in my life. That, he threw the ring in his hand towards him. This is the ring represent. Zeke always held it because he was son. As for this man, after seeing me throw the heir's ring like a pile of trash towards him, he couldn't contain his composure and went to the railing and yelled. What the hell are you doing? This question, Zeke answered very nonchalantly, like I'm leaving this family of my own accord. The reason Zeke could say these words was because this was his second life. In his life, he knew how miserable this family was. But that's not the main reason. Biggest reasons he could give up the heir's position without its that in his previous life. He had reached the pinnacle of human strength. He was also the one who took the lives of countless people. Those who worshipped him called him the Demon King. As he regressed, it's because he was beaten to death. All of this has to do with the day before. A decisive battle between him and the Heroes Party took place. Enemies meeting need no words. The entire Heroes Party began to launch countless moves towards Zeke. But facing the moves, Zeke only used a few sword strikes to cut them all apart. But at this moment, a voice rang out, may you always be full of, oh hero. After this girl's blessing, the hero's whole body covered in a golden divine light, and his strength reached its peak limit. And in a moment, the hero unleashed a powerful cleaving strike towards Zeke. Just looking at the giant sword aura in front of him, he knew that he couldn't withstand this blow. Then, a earth-shattering explosion began, and Zeke was lost. I don't know how long has passed. This time Zeke slowly woke up, because in his ears there were countless voices. Kill him quickly, he is the Demon King. Who knows when he will recover his strength? He can't do anything to us in this state, the hero said. At this point, Zeke began to really come to his senses and realized he wasn't dead yet. Standing in front of him was the handsome hero. Although he didn't like him, he had to admit that he was really. And on this side, the hero also started pointing his head. Listen, before I finish you off, I will recount all the crimes you have committed. Hundreds of lives of the holy knights of the Carwoodman team, killing innocent people, blah blah blah, and of course, this isn't a wrongful action, he really did do these things. But even though that was what, hearing the hero say it with his own mouth made him feel a little uncomfortable. At the same time, a thought popped into his head, it would be a waste of this. Luckily, I still have the key to bend fate. Thanks, I can stab this bastard one last time. Along with the blade that has bent the fate of the target to change the future, but I don't know how his future will change. And while the hero had finished reading Zeke's crimes and was preparing to execute him, Demon King Zeke. I hope in the next will become someone who knows how to do good deeds. Said this, he swung his sword. Okay, if I have, but not now. I have to do quickly, it's to teach you a lesson, you idiot,